I want to understand that. I've been on trying to think. I was a part of student government and stuff like that. So I'm thinking of what governance means.
Okay.
Are this like when you can speak and when you can't speak and how you get something passed? And can you give me a rundown of
Yes,
good governance?
absolutely. So the way the EDPA bylaws are set up, full board of 25 people. We had 6 or 7 on the executive committee. The executive committee really manages the association on a day-to-day. We go to the board for big decisions requiring a vote. So you've got 4 vice presidents on the executive committee. You have a president, and you
Okay.
have a president emeritus. You have an executive director who's kind of outside that, although they're sort of in the group. And then we have a liaison, which is another voice, which is between the EDPA Foundation and us. So, there's the mix-up. But the bylaws say that the executive committee makes those decisions. It doesn't say the president makes the decision or that vote is more important than anybody else. And depending every year, the president was changing. So when we got there, based on the strength of the leader, the individual, I'm not saying better or worse, you either had a passive person in that role in past years who really leaned on groupthink, or you had a strong person that there's a sense of urgency, we need to get this done. And that president, that year's president, would make a decision because they're a president of a company and they're used to making decisions. And yet we weren't being true to the governing rules, the bylaws required, and that is the executive committee votes. And I imagine it's a lot like the Supreme Court. There's a chief justice, and I'm sure there's some administrative responsibilities. I can tell you there's some things, but I don't view that my voice is any more important than any others. So I'll pause right there on just those few things that I touched
Okay.
on. Michael, I mean, are those lessons that you learned or experiences that made you a better leader? Because all of this has made me a better leader, I think, even the parts that have been challenging.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I would say is, nonprofit or an association board of directors, and maybe I'm reading into a different side of that question, Khalil, is there are organizations that follow Robert's rules, which is a formal way to navigate activity within, board activity as it transpires. So there's, open dialogue sessions, right? So those are private discussions among board members and then executive committee members in the situation of our association. At the executive committee level in the EDPA, that dialogue is not recorded, right? So it's very private. Whereas the board of directors could decide in a greater more meeting to actually record that. It's a much more structured process because you're acting as a group on behalf of the membership, and the membership, you serve at the pleasure of the membership, right? So the extent of Robert's rules in this particular association is I'm looking for a motion, and is there a second, right?
By the way, how does that differ from Marcus of Queensberry rules?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I'm sorry. Is it?
But anyway,
let's table that one.
When I was in Habitat for Humanity, we had a couple of people that were very formal and really drove all of that. So, and for my freewheeling nature, I was like, oh my gosh, this just slows everything down. So I also think that's a possibility if someone were considering participating on a board, what is the structure? What is governance like? How do people behave themselves? Maybe a little bit of research on who actually are members of the board, because Chris will probably echo what I'm going to say. We've been incredibly fortunate to be on the executive committee in our association where the depth of interest, aptitude, and action
absolutely
is incredibly high. Yeah. So much so that our executive director, he hears it from sister associations that, how are you getting all these people so active? I don't know how, other than, Chris, you and I can take a bow because we literally
it's leadership, really.
Yeah,
we
no. I think so. This is what I believe, and this is how I show up on a board. Is I believe that human beings are better critics than creators. So
Mm.
I have always been willing to say the thing that leads to the thing. So I'm really never as connected to the words I say as I'm interested in what happens. And on a board,
Can you give me an example of that?
Poet laureate Michael McMahon, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Well, I would just say so. A lot of times in meetings, and I always joke with Chris. I'll say afterwards, I'll call him up and I'm like, "You saw me fall on that sword, right?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I did." And what it is saying the thing in the room that needs to be said, because I'm not trying to move or inspire the room to like me, right? It's much different. And in an association, on an association board, you have people in different positions within the industry. Sometimes people are on the board so that they can earn new business, right? In our particular association, I actually don't require anybody that's on the board for me to do well in my profession. The benefit I get is I might meet some people and the bonding and rapport leads to an advocacy that leads to business for them. Right. So, and
But
I
you
don't
know
like
what,
to-
Michael? If you go at an issue, like as you call it, falling on the sword, you're not a bomb thrower. You don't do that to hit people up for reaction. I know this about you, and I've been in the room usually, and it's something that needs to be said. It's a contrarian view that needs to be introduced. It's a discussion that needs to happen, and we're all better for it. And yet there's an awkwardness by most people, maybe, that they don't want to be the one to say that. And you have such a way of bringing up what others might call a difficult topic that it's never viewed really as personal or attack-like. It's just, it opens up the devil's advocate and the contrarian side, which makes for better decision-making. And this is something, if you're listening right now, we're talking about things that prepare you to be a good board member. And I really believe, I think we're an industry that's in service to others, but as we all age and we all have something that we're passionate about, whether it's the EDPA association you are going to serve, or it's your local board, what we're talking about, these lessons apply to all of it. And so if you're going to sign up, show up and be genuine and authentic, and don't be afraid to say, I don't know what I'm doing on this, but it seems to me, ... right? Be that person, because I think Michael talked about sort of the special sauce that we both feel exists with our leadership at EDPA. It's because people all do that. And I know that when I see somebody risk that and open up a conversation like that, I feel better raising my hand and contributing.